and welcome to Gardener's World. Not the official one, of course. This is the Jardin Bencard version. Every year at Chelsea Flower Show Week, which this is, I usually do an evaluation of my garden, usually in a notebook. But this year I thought I'd try video. So come along. I'll show you what's going on. Now, of all the investments we've made in the garden, the newest one, proper garden furniture. I scouted this out at the Chelsea Flower Show last year, invested in them in Hampton Court. Dogs like them almost as much as we do. And this is a cocktail area at the end of the day, giving me a chance to look at the real heart of the garden, which is this pond garden. This is really the angle the whole garden is designed to be viewed from. We're down on the lower patio, and you can see a little sweep of lawn coming through the pond, down to the walk out to the garage, and where we park the cars, and my little greenhouse area. This is going to be this garden's 7th summer. We moved in August of 2012, had the pond and all of the trellises put in over the winter. So most of these plantings, or at least the basic beds, go back to the summer of 2013. So I call this the pond bed. The geraniums get overwintered in my little greenhouse. The alpines around the pond are doing really well this year. This will be filled with water lilies in about a month. Irises are very odd to grow here. They don't really get enough sun because everything in this garden is partial shade at some point during the day. So this bed, or putting them in the middle of the pond, is as close to sunny as I can get. Bruno's trying to eat the fish. These Siberian iris are going to be absolutely amazing in about a month. I tried to divide these earlier this year, managed to break a very sturdy gardening fork. They are like concrete at the root ball, so we're just going to leave them and let them thrive. That's a lovage that's gone crazy. Nice foliage, so I've just let it go. And this miscanthus has been a stalwart since the first year I put it in. Gonna have to ask on this one at Hardy's booth. A lot of my plants come from Hardy's cottage garden plants. This geum has been a staple for about 3 years. Has always been so healthy, and I don't know what's going on with it this year, but we're definitely gonna have to have a chat because that's not its normal performance. However, this Centaria will start to bloom probably this week, and this will be in bloom till the end of July. This bit down here is mostly reseeded. Those columbine, purple and white, which is a theme throughout this garden, and these lovely nigella, which are just coming out, just seed themselves every year. And then what I've tried to do from this angle is get lots of spring flowers that spill into the pond. And here, just coming out, first rose of the year. That is Munstead wood, and that is probably the strongest scented rose I've ever planted. It's absolutely astonishing. This is my one bit of grass. And grass is tough here. We're on really heavy clay. The builders did absolutely nothing to help the soil. And because of the high walls, everything, as I said, is really quite shady. So a lot of people, unfortunately, in this neighborhood have gotten rid of their grass. There's a lot of astroturf around here. I keep fighting the good fight. The grass is important to suspend the hammock over. This is a Semillon grapevine, which I am delighted to say is coming up beautifully, and I think I'm going to have quite a few bunches of grapes. I think we'll be eating those rather than making wine out of them, but it's still fun to have a wine grape. Another thing that I did differently last year was actually follow the advice from the people at David Austin Roses. This is their constant gardener, and get on a regular fertilization regime, which I have a feeling is going to pay proper dividends. So I call this the Rockbourne bed. This is very shady, so it's taken years for me to really figure out what works here. But we've got the happy ferns. That big purple actia in the back by midsummer is going to be as high as the wall, as is that penstemon Husker red next to it. The hellebores here were in beautiful bloom. I don't get a lot of flowers here. This is very much about foliage, little tiny flowers. That space right there will be for dahlias that will do well in the summer, and that is a peony Nippon Beauty, which didn't do well next to the pond, but seems to be happy here. Now here, I'm getting ready for some sweet peas that are going to grow up this teepee, and we're going to crown it with a bit of Georgian elegance. This bed between the stairs is really important because we use the door behind me to come in and out of the house most days. So this is really the first thing we see. It is glorious in the springtime, absolutely filled with forget-me-nots and bluebells. Those are all just going over. So it's green right now, and in another month it will be amazing with lots of roses. That is Rhapsody in Blue, and that is Gertrude Jekyll, and those big plumes of monkshood that'll be coming up. And there is a little gravel path down there that goes back to that hostel. So this has turned into a bit of an engine room for the garden, where I've got my potting bench in the greenhouse. Right now I'm planting some freesia bulbs that I completely forgot about that should look like this, but they may or may not come up since they've been sitting underneath my potting bench for a month. Happily, the other half got put in a pot when they were supposed to, so we should be seeing those later in the summer. This little area, which I jokingly call the paddock, was originally intended for the dogs. The idea was that we were going to be able to close the gate, put them in their doghouse, and they could live back here when we weren't home. Unfortunately, the way they bark, the neighbors would never forgive us. So it became my greenhouse and my working area. Now, this is a Loganberry that is 3 years old now, and I think is at the point where I'm going to have a hell of a crop, and I'm growing it on cordons overhead. So hopefully, as I say, that will do well. And this is a stunning clematis on its way, which will completely cover that with dark purple flowers, and hopefully will cover part of the greenhouse as well. And the greenhouse is almost emptied out now, but I've still got a few things to plant out. They're the sweet peas. I grow the bigger tomatoes in here because it tends to need the extra heat. Got some dahlias on their way, and still got seedlings coming up. Close to the house is where I put the vegetables and the herbs, basically the edible stuff. I usually don't bother with much of that because it's a small garden. But up here around the patio, we do the kind of stuff that we can use all the time in the kitchen. Now the idea with this patio up close to the house is not only that it should be a nice place to eat, but that I can pop out my back door and grab stuff for the cooking pot very, very quickly. So I've got some lettuce right next to the door, and I'll keep planting out lettuce seedlings all year. Those are decorative. But then I have multiple types of mint because an English garden can never have enough mint to put into your pims. And the garden of a man with Danish roots can never have enough dill, so that gets planted successively as well. I've got peas on the way. There's a courgette, which mostly I grow for its flowers to be stuffed and fried. There's a spaghetti squash experimental this year. We'll see how that goes. Surrounded by a little enfilade of cavolo nero and some spring onions, lots of tarragon, great with chicken. Lemon balm smells fantastic and good as a tea. That's a Thai basil mint. And we've got the chives coming into bloom over there. On this side, Mediterranean herbs, because this is quite a warm, sunny wall above them. So I've got my rosemary, parsley, thyme, and sage. And this bed is potatoes with a little bit of rocket or arugula growing on top of it, just filling some space until the potatoes come up completely. Here are my chili peppers, some horseradish, one of 3 pots of raspberries, and an olive tree that grows so slowly that I'll be long dead by the time it looks at all impressive, considering that it's already 8 years old and really looks the same as the day I bought it. And then going down this pathway, this is my hosta allée. Still plenty more room for hostas and pots. But note to myself when shopping, I need dark blues or whites. Light greens to the bluey color, I have plenty of. That's the door to my office, so I always like to have something attractive next to it. So this standard daisy, and hopefully we're going to have some cascading lobelia by midsummer. And that's a nice scented geranium that when I brush by gives off a rose scent. This fig tree is probably 7 years old now, and I'm very excited to say that I may actually have a fig this year or two. Figs need a double season here. They set their fruit in the autumn, then they overwinter, and if you have a warm spring, then they'll come out and you might be able to get some fruit by the end of the summer. So I'm hopeful. But as I said, irises are really hard. I thought this would be a blaze with purple and white. I only had one stem that did well, but that's my favorite iris for obvious reasons. And coming down here, you also have my favorite hosta. Now, I'm absolutely passionate about hostas. They were one of my mother's favorites. They're a fantastic woodland plant, so they were great in the house where I grew up. That one in a pot is called Cathedral Window. So I hope you like the tour. This time of year, the garden's heavier on foliage than on flowers. I will probably do another one of these videos right before Hampton Court Flower Show, where I suspect we'll get a lot more bloom. I'd love to know what you think. Any suggestions you have for improving the garden, I'm happy to hear. Bye.